Welcome back to my disembodied voice. Now, be it the monster movie, comic book, horror, or even the science fiction genre, one thing has to be congruent in terms of making it special, memorable, and exciting. And that job falls on the writer when they are creating the villain, beast, or antagonist, as without your source of conflict, you don't have a movie. Conflict drives everything, and when we're watching movies, we need some peril and obstacles to flummox and scare us. Otherwise, it's just basic storytelling which switches off the brain and causes you to lose interest. All stories, bar the odd nihilistic ones which go for a gut punch ending, such as The Mist, for example, tell familiar tenets of story structure. Even Marvel's cinematic universe has a very basic structure underneath, even if each movie is little more than an advert for the next movie. But let's stick on that structure, and that structure is the protagonist starts the movie in one place, then an antagonist, be it a monster or a psychotic clown or whatever, appears and creates conflict and jeopardy, and the protagonist must find a way to overcome said obstacle before they can progress to the ending of the movie, having undergone a very significant change. And how movies get people interested and try and create tension is by tricking the audience into believing that the villain is far more powerful and unstoppable than the hero, and the hero might actually die or, at worst, suffer serious injury. Now, we know when watching a movie called Indiana Jones that Indiana Jones isn't going to die, but when he gets into a fight, they put Indy against impossible odds and batter him from pillar to post. Now, the assumption is that the hero will live, that Indy will survive. We kind of know that. But we're pushed to the point where we think he's not going to get out of this, he's going to die, and that creates tension in the mind of the viewer. After all, if Kyle Reese in the original Terminator just shot the Terminator and the Terminator fell backwards, malfunctioned, and didn't get back up for about half a movie, it was going to be a fairly easy escape for him and Sarah Connor. However, if cars, shotguns, explosions, and even throwing the kitchen sink doesn't stop the Terminator, then even though our lovely frontal lobes in our brains know that the good guys will ultimately triumph and the Terminator will be stopped, we start second guessing and worrying over the outcome of the conflict, and this places our heroes in danger. This means we have our attention focused, and it creates a dissonance of the expected outcome against what actually might happen and surprise us, and therefore our brains create tension. So join me for today's video as we look at movie monster and villains which were powerful, admirable, scary, thrilling, and terrifying, and then compare them to some truly wet flannels who did nothing but make us laugh, yawn, sigh, or pick up our phones and just think, maybe I should call Auntie Doris and let her know I'm coming on Sunday. Now, as I said at the start of the video, a movie is more than likely going to have a predictable outcome, i.e. the good guys win. So the trick is to entice you with the journey the protagonist is going to go on. However, as everything we get from movies is from the visual and aural senses in our body, in other words, seeing and hearing, the movie needs to alter your brainwaves so you become engaged. Now, sometimes we see things and it reminds us of personal experiences. It's why sad movies where people break up or die make us cry, because we understand and we empathise with that emotion. It brings back parts of our brain when we go, I lost someone once, I know how that feels, and therefore the sight and sound do trigger deep internal parts of the brain which release certain chemicals. However, the upshot is that the movie needs to alter your brainwaves so you become engaged. So let's look at brainwaves and see how they work. We'll take this from the bottom and go to the top. Okay, so brainwaves. Delta, 0.5 to 4 Hz. Sleep. This is your lowest brainwave pattern which signals sleep. Theta, 4 to 8 Hz. This brainwave means you are deeply relaxed and inward focused. Alpha, 8 to 12 Hz, relaxed and passive attention. Beta, 12 to 35 Hz, anxiety dominant, active, externally attentive. Gamma, greater than 35 Hz, concentration, high arousal, and stress. Now, most of us use beta to alpha brainwaves when we are living our day-to-day lives, but cinema is meant to be for stimulation and, be it a comedy, horror, thriller, action, or whatever, the aim is to engage you and really get the brain going. And the more engaged you are, the more emotive you are, and the more susceptible you are to enjoying something, loving the ride, and concentrating on what is unfolding before you. So, for movies, we should be using gamma waves, as gamma waves are considered to be the fastest brain activity. They are responsible for cognitive functioning, learning, memory, and information processing. Prominence of this wave leads to things like anxiety, high arousal, and stress. Now, whilst its suppression can lead to ADHD, depression, and learning disabilities, in optimal conditions, gamma waves help with attention, focus, binding of senses such as smell, sight, and hearing, consciousness, mental processing, and perception. And as most movies are about 2 hours long, we are using films as a method of focus and entertainment. Now, horror movies are designed to evoke fear and suspense and keep viewers on the edge of their seats. This excitement and anxiety stimulate the brain to produce some beta waves, which are associated with active thinking and problem solving, and then gamma waves, 35 Hz and above, linked to heightened perception and stress. These higher frequencies keep the brain alert and vigilant, ready to react to any perceived threats. Basically, although you're safe on your couch or the cinema screen, if you're entertained, you're using your brain power, activating your endocrinal system for dopamine, serotonin, etc. And even though, as I said before, you're completely safe, you're living this journey and going through every moment of the movie with the protagonist. Right, so we've established how brainwaves work and how we become engaged. So let's come back to the focus of the essay, and we'll start with some powerful antagonists and see how they really cause us to remember them in cinematic memory. Now remember, our heroes are more than likely going to survive, so the movie needs to generate the conflict and doubt so your brain keeps chugging along and enjoying the movie whilst second guessing the outcome. It's important to remember that anything we enjoy increases brain activity, and as we have brilliant frontal lobes which work with higher functions mixed alongside our more primitive brain areas which are about survival, fight and flight, keeping us alive, good villains should have philosophy, gravitas, and activate all the areas of brain function which involve your emotive and cognitive sides. They should scare you, amaze you, appall you, entice you. They should also make you think about what they're doing, how powerful they are, where they've come from, what their motivations are, how this is going to affect the hero. Basically, they should make parts of your brain light up. So let's start with a really good big bad, if you know what I mean. First, with Thanos, who is the main antagonist in Avengers Infinity War. Having been there in snippets throughout the Infinity Saga, we finally meet him properly in the opening scenes of Infinity War, and boy, he does not disappoint in how he is introduced. Thanos is powerful, has gravitas, and is tortured by the memory of seeing his planet perish whilst everyone laughed at his mass euthanasia plan of halving the population. Therefore, Thanos wants the Infinity Stones. When we first meet Thanos, he almost kills Thor and beats the Hulk half to death. Basically, he's toppled the two most powerful Avengers with great ease, and thus we take him seriously. He then goes on to batter Iron Man, Spider-Man, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Doctor Strange, and despite one lull where they almost get the gauntlet off his arm, we cannot see a way that anyone will be able to get past him. Thanos is just so powerful, and he can even to get what he wants. Basically, Thanos causes such problems for the Avengers that we can't see how they will beat him, and considering that Vision dies and half of them are dusted by the end of the film, although we know it's a two-parter and Endgame's more than likely going to rectify this and put everything back, we wonder just how on earth they're going to stop someone so powerful. Another great movie with a great antagonist is Godzilla Minus One. Now, in Godzilla -1, a Leviathan emerges from the deep and starts terrorizing Japan. And no matter what they shoot it with, the monster regenerates and keeps getting bigger. It destroys infrastructure, decimates a city with atomic breath, and is just so insurmountable. Even when it walks, the sheer size of Godzilla causes the concrete to buckle, and every single swipe of its tail decimates enormous amounts of buildings. Again, no matter what our heroes or the other humans throw at Godzilla, it just gets stronger to the point where you can't see any way they're going to beat it. Jaws is another creature feature which has a great monster, this time a 25-foot great white shark, and once the town finally accepts that summer is over and no one's going to swim at their beaches, Quint, Brody and Hooper go out on a boat and hunt for the shark. Now, what transpires after this is that the shark slowly destroys them, overcomes everything they throw at it, and breaks them down emotionally, and in terms of their boat, it breaks it down literally. Now, Hooper is an encyclopedia of sharks, and Quint is a notorious slayer of sharks, and those particular protagonists are vital, because if the encyclopedia and the slayer can't stop it, who on earth can? Quint uses barrels and guns, whilst Hooper tries poison and a cage, but each time the shark is too big and too much for them, and eventually only the water-phobic Brody remains with little more than a spear, a gun, and an air tank. The shark breaks the men's spirits, and, as Spielberg famously said, by the end of the movie, if the audience is in the palm of my hand, I'm going to rinse them for everything and push them right to the last shot. In Independence Day, the aliens arrive in a ship 1/4 the mass of our moon, and then sends multiple 15-mile wide flying saucers to decimate cities with death beams. Humans fight back, but no matter what they throw at the aliens, we just get creamed and humanity is on the brink of extinction. After our most powerful nuclear weapon does little more than cause a strong wind around one of the ships, humanity is lost, dying, and has no hope. Even the virus they implant into it fails upon first delivery, and, with a delay filtering down to the ships below, Whitmore's first missile hits a shield and humanity sighs as all hope is lost. However, but for one last egotistical and determinative go by Whitmore, we all would have ended up dead thinking the virus had failed. Now, we could go on, but be it The Thing, The Terminator, or the T-1000 in the sequel, which is even more powerful than Arnie's T-800, Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, Darth Vader in Star Wars, or the aliens in Aliens, the villains better the humans each time, and this causes jeopardy, anxiety, and stress. Each of these villains drives the story, creates massive amounts of tension, gets us worried about what's going to happen next, and causes awe as we see their explosions, relentless and psychotic methods of power, destruction, or just sheer brutality in terms of beating down our protagonists. And it's important that our protagonists get rinsed, are put through the ringer, and lose via consequence or have their lives changed, as without the villain decimating their lives or forcing them into quick thinking to live, your intelligent viewers start saying, well, why don't they just, or, oh, for God's sake, use your gun and stop talking. This is ridiculous. We're smart. We know plot holes. We know what people would do. And our brains are already thinking one step ahead. And it's because your brain waves are engaged, your high-level brain waves, that you're looking at something and already trying to second guess it. You're wondering what happens next. And our minds are thinking, but they're also worried, entertained, and engaged. But from such high brain activity, let's look at some pathetic villains and how these guys and gals didn't cut the mustard, and how this undermined the movies they were in and bored the audience. In Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, we meet Kang the Conqueror, who has apparently traversed the multiverse and killed many versions of the Avengers. He is currently trapped in the quantum realm and wants to get out so he can do evil things. He is the big bad after Thanos, and many years of story are going to lead up to the Kang dynasty. Well, they're not anymore after Jonathan Majors' problems off screen, and we're now going to get Doomsday. Anyway, that's a different topic. Back to Kang. Now, there are 1 billion plus versions of Kang across 1 billion or so multiverses, and our minds don't really compute such numbers and scale, and as we've already seen a version of Kang get killed by female Loki, He Who Remains, of course, in the TV series Loki, this new Kang is just another Kang on a production line of Kangs who offers no real impact. And by the end, be it fighting a commune of advanced ants or Ant-Man himself, who doesn't really have super strength like Thor or Hulk does, Kang is beaten far too easily for the sake of Disney doing what Disney does worst, which is using a 2-hour movie to act as a trailer for the next movie. And Kang the Conqueror, who has killed Thor previously in another universe and is presented as a dangerous villain, comes across as little more than a mild obstacle who just prattles on and bores everyone. Nobody really dies, no major sacrifices are made, and despite getting a bit of a beating, Ant-Man seems to hold up okay and thus dilutes the villain. Like I said, Thanos battered Thor and Hulk in the first 10 minutes of Infinity War. Kang just rambles and gets beaten by ants, and then doesn't do much against Ant-Man himself. This is the big bad conqueror who's going to be the portent of things to come. Straight away the audience goes, no, and sees the plot holes, sees the weakness, and the whole impact is lost. Roland Emmerich may have given us the wonderful Independence Day, but he followed it up with the truly woeful 1998 movie called Godzilla. Now, in this Godzilla, a nuclear test creates a radioactive and oversized iguana which rampages through a city with rickets in its chicken legs. Tall but with no real mass, the monster seems to forget it can breathe fire and, when the military turn up, it runs away. Dodging between buildings and swimming away from submarines, this Godzilla gets stunned or dies whenever hit by a missile. Now, yes, it's painted as a tragic man-made monster that we have to kill because we have no choice in terms of making it with nuclear testing, but the monster has no gravitas, isn't immune to weapons like the new Godzillas are, looks geeky and stupid, and, be it Emmerich just wanting to rip off Jurassic Park, even Godzilla's babies are more like gremlins than the lethal velociraptors in the way they pratfall and run. Anyway, always one missile away from being killed, Emmerich's Godzilla is flat, dull, and, due to forgetting it can spray fiery breath, doesn't cause hardly any damage and fails to fight back and just has no impact in terms of everyone wondering how it can be stopped. In Star Wars The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren walks out of his ship with a cool mask, cool voice, stops a blaster shot with the Force and then slaughters someone for fun. It's all looking good, there's a lot of promise here and everyone was very excited. But then Kylo takes off his mask, strops like a child, gets belittled by Snoke, and then doesn't really batter the non-Force sensitive Finn. The fight is more spectacle than it is suspenseful, and then he ends up getting creamed by Rey. Kylo could have been a merciless villain who dominated the screen, chewed the scenery, and showed how powerful he was, but as masks aren't favoured by Disney, he's more of a petulant child than a powerful Sith Lord. He spends both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi sulking more than scaring. Vader force-choked people for fun, dominated each scene and gave the aura of near invincibility, and even with the Emperor, there was a mutual respect between the two major villains. By the time we get to The Last Jedi and Snoke is telling Kylo to take off his ridiculous helmet, Kylo is little more than a Disney princess cosplaying in a Walmart Darth Vader outfit. It completely undercuts what could have been a great villain, and, as I said, when he came out in The Force Awakens and looked so amazing, it undoes all of that work in a heartbeat. Let's come to Suicide Squad and Jared Leto's Joker. Now, apart from the fact that he looks ridiculous and needs the word damaged tattooed on his head to tell everyone that he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic, all this Joker does is dress like a low-rent drag queen and giggle. Whilst Heath Ledger's Joker outmatched Batman because there was no pain or threat Batman could make because the Joker knew Batman wouldn't kill him, and even being beaten to a pulp didn't bother him because this Joker was a masochist, Batman had nothing to do with all his strength. Leto's Joker, on the other hand, just has a silly low-rent Heath Ledger voice, and as we don't see him kill Robin like it is suggested in Batman vs Superman with the spray-painted suit, he does little more than act like a dick around Harley Quinn whilst threatening gangsters rather than killing them. In The Dark Knight, the Joker had no problem shoving a pencil up a nose or snapping someone's neck. Therefore, this Joker, Jared Leto's Joker, has no menace. He doesn't alter the story, he doesn't make us feel for Harley in any way, and his toxicity is little more than, well, a bit like Jared Leto's behaviour amongst the cast when they were filming. Just being a dick. Finally, we have Ultron in the rather poor Avengers movie, The Age of Ultron. In the comics, Ultron is an all-powerful monster who all but wipes out the Avengers, and his Legion rule the world to such dystopian nihilism that the Avengers have to travel back in time to stop him. Indestructible, mad, and completely tortured, Ultron should be a robot Hulk who drives the Avengers to the point of death and despair like the trailer suggested. However, this Ultron is completely and utterly watered down. His Legion are always dispatched with ease, and Ultron himself can't even kick Captain America off a moving lorry, and by the end, it only takes a concentrated shot of laser beams to punch and knock him into next week. Far too keen to make a joke rather than show his mercilessness, the Avengers aren't really tested by his rage, and the Disneyfication of a megalomaniacal tyrant is diluted down to someone who, at the start, even struggles to brawl with Iron Man. A bland villain of endless punchline, Ultron switches brainwaves off rather than engages them, and this is why he comes across as insipid and dull. As I cited at the start of this video, your villain needs to be powerful, exciting, cost the protagonist something, shock the audience, be an unstoppable force, and create genuine tension to create that dissonance in your mind. You know the hero's going to be okay. You know there's going to be consequences, but the film is pushing you to believe how will they get out of it? He is in real danger, and you start to doubt and think and wonder. Different parts of your brain light up, the emotive part, the logical part, and they all play together as you're bombarded with visual and aural stimulus, and it's brilliant. Even Indiana Jones's fights in the first two movies, that's Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, against thugs who weren't the main villains, created drama and dread because you generally feared for his life amidst these crunching brawls. Movie villains are there for conflict. They are there to generate the tension, horror, shock, and worry, and cause us to root for our protagonists, because our antagonists are either evil or just forces of nature which make us question how the protagonist will survive. We're on a journey in films. We're following characters, and therefore our antagonists need to play a big part in this. And when the writers and filmmakers get it right, when you just can't see how a clunky Arnie T800 is going to stop the T1000 liquid metal monster, or how a highly organised unit of Marines, which has now been whittled down to a pocketful of desperate survivors by a hive of aliens, is going to escape a planet that is set to explode, the viewer is hooked, and their minds, worries and anxiety and all the parts of the brain a visual and aural medium like movie should be stimulating, they all start feeling engaged with the plot and spectacle, and we switch off the outside world. Your attention span is vital. When you watch a movie, there are so many components of your brain working and enjoying it that you should be gripped amidst genuine fear for a well-written character, and this gets you psychologically engaged and leaves you talking about the film for weeks. Or just think of any movie that's bored you to death and caused you to pick up your phone out of absolute boredom. Speaking of which, what about you guys? Who are your best and worst villains in movies? Who left an iconic print on you? Who scared you? And who made you go, oh, please, and meh? Basically, let me know in the comments, as healthy discussion is always good on here. Anyway, that's it for this week's video. So remember that psychology is cool. Please like, share, and subscribe, as more subscriptions means more vids. And as ever, until next time, I'll catch you later.